You know, when I first got to prison, you know, I was in a lot of relationships and stuff like that, and that was one of my problems, I think, when I was out here. You know, was being in bad relationships and stuff like that, and I think at some point, you know, like I just didn't have, you know, the respect for myself that I needed, and maybe my self-esteem wasn't all that good, and I wasn't even paying attention to my surroundings because I was so busy doing what I was doing that, you know, I had the shot and I was trying to find a vein, and next thing I know, somebody's knocking on the window. Well, it happened to be the Chesapeake police, and they're like, "Hey, Shannon, come on, get out of the truck for me." And I was like,
they knew your name.
They knew my name. I think I was in yet like another bad relationship, and I think the epiphany came like at some point during that relationship, like, you know, this person just didn't treat me the way that I treated them, and I realized, you know, at some point that, you know, I was doing the same thing on the street. Like I was putting somebody before I was putting my family, and, you know, before I was putting myself. Like I just didn't care about myself like I should care about myself. And I think that that was the major epiphany that I really did have, like that I didn't care about myself.
Well, folks, we've won the lottery. We've got millions of dollars at this point, and now we have a bona fide Dr. Phil type filming studio. I'm totally kidding. We are trespassing at this point. But you know what? That's what we do here on After Prison Show. We commit crime in an effort to be able to bring you the best possible. I'm probably failing. Folks, what we're doing right here, we're in a new location, and this is somewhere you guys probably never seen before. It's a location that's available to us, and we've got Shannon here with us as well. And the first thing that I want to say is, Shannon, just thank you so much for taking the time to meet with us again and also continuously.
Thanks for having me.
So I want to ask you real quick, and this is something that I have to do throughout the course of us working with you. I just want to make sure that you're comfortable with everything that we've been doing thus far. You know, you're getting a chance to meet not only me, but Cody and Dave and Danny too. But, you know, how has the experience been for you rocking with us?
Oh, you know, I think it's been really good so far. You know, I've had a good time doing this so far, actually. You know, I think that it's been a good move. You know, I've gotten some really good comments, some things that are probably going to actually help me, you know, in some really positive ways.
And, you know, with the positivity, this was something that I explained to you off camera. There's going to be an overwhelming response in terms of positive comments, but also I had to warn you that there would be negative ones as well. And I'm sure you've seen some of these negative comments. And, you know, when you read these comments, you know, do they affect you, or what do you think when you read them? And you don't have to mention any of the comments because we don't like to give people like that too much attention. But when you do run across the negative comments, how does that affect you?
Well, you know, it's funny because some of the negative comments, it actually shows me how far I've come, because, you know, at one time, you know, the past, you know, I would have had to argue or, you know, try to prove myself. And, you know, that just tells me I've come a long way, because I really don't have anything to prove these days. You know, these people weren't there, they don't know. And, you know, I feel like that just shows me even more how far I've come.
And I want to say that I'm super proud of you for the changes that you've made in your life. These changes don't have anything to do with us. These are changes you've wanted to make for yourself. They probably stem from the many years that you've spent making mistakes, making the wrong choices, and also time that you spent in prison. So it's just really compelling to see a person such as yourself, such as I've done it too, Dave's done it, there's been a lot of other people who have done it. You reach a point in your life where enough is enough and you've got to make the changes.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, there were some serious changes I had to make in my life. You know, I've really come a long way. You know, if you would have known me, you know, 5 or 6 years ago, I mean, you would really see how far I've come.
And that's exactly what I want to focus on in this video, is your past. Now, I know this is a negative topic. I know this is very dark, and, you know, we're going to go back to a time that you're probably trying to separate yourself from as much as you possibly can. But the reason I want to go into this, there's a couple of reasons. One, I want to give people a better sense of who you are, what you've been through, and where you've come from. But more important than that, I want everything that we're doing with you to be something that you're able to look back on and reflect on. So this video, even though it's a video that we want to use for After Prison Show, but this is a video that I feel could be good for you to talk about these things that you've gone through. More importantly, why you went to prison for 5 years, and also be able to look at this if ever, you know, you're faced with any kind of hardships or thoughts of, you know, what if I just can go use one time, because it's something that you can't do. I want this to be a vessel for you to be able to look back on and be like, you know what, I don't never want to go back to that. So as hard as it's going to be to talk about these things that we are getting ready to talk about, I truly feel like there's a positive point to all of this as well. And then to continue moving forward with you, just to see how far you're able to separate yourself from all of this negativity.
If you were to take a look at my past, gosh, I mean, when I was about 18 years old, I had met this guy and I talked about it, in a past video. I basically came home one night and him and my roommate were shooting up crack, and that's basically where my addiction started. I had decided I wanted to try it that night. I hadn't ever done anything but smoke pot. From there, I kind of had started doing oxys. Oxys were real popular in Florida, and then I started doing heroin, and that whole time I was basically shooting cocaine, shooting crack, and I got involved in the club scene real heavy, and was going to a bunch of raves. During that time, I was selling drugs at the same time and making trips out of state and bringing stuff back in, and even at the time, making gel tabs and crystal wash and paper, and getting a hold of a bunch of things that could have got me into some real serious trouble. And at that time in my addiction, I was still able to sell drugs, and I started shoplifting on a pretty heavy basis, and I had gotten arrested a couple times in Florida for shoplifting. No real serious trouble, but then my addiction started to spiral pretty heavy. I had some serious things happen in my life, like my daughter's father committed suicide. That was a pretty heavy thing that happened in my life that took a pretty serious emotional toll on me, and I kind of got real out of control with my drug use, and I just didn't have much. I guess I didn't have much to lose, or I didn't think I had much to lose in my life, and like there was just this relationship I had with heroin, like it took everything away. My relationship with my family, and it really took a toll on me. I might get clean here and there and get my life together for a little while here and there, but ultimately I ended up in prison, and it took me a long time to realize what was really going on with me. Like, it wasn't really so much the addiction. I think I didn't know how to deal with myself, and this time in prison really helped me learn how to deal with myself. So
I want to slow down just a minute, because you've given us a lot of information right there, and I appreciate you being so willing and forthcoming to share these things with us. I want to go back to a few different things. The first thing that I want to talk about is, you mentioned all of these different drugs that you were experimenting with and also dealing with addictions too. One thing in particular was the crack cocaine. You mentioned that in the very first video that we did with you. I read some comments where people were like, I think she's confused, you can't shoot crack cocaine. And that is something that you absolutely can do, where you break this cocaine down to a liquid form. And we don't have to do a how-to tutorial video about the ins and outs of that, but this is something that people definitely do. And you can shoot cocaine, you can shoot crack, and obviously you can shoot just a number of other things. And the effect is so much more intensified. I personally don't know, but I can only imagine the effect is just that much more intensified, using this drug intravenously, I think is the right way to word that.
Yeah, it definitely is. And a lot of times, it's sad to say, but a lot of times crack's almost easier to come by on the street if you're just trying to get something real quick. If you don't have somebody to call right away. And here it is anyway in Florida, stuff's easy to come by all the time. But if you're trying to grab something real quick, it's so easy to come by. And it's vinegar or lemon juice will break it down. I mean, so I read a lot of the comments, and a lot of people just don't know, because they haven't been in my situation. But
it's not just your situation. There's many other people who have gone through or probably going through something similar to what you've been through. And just like I mentioned a little while ago, how there were a couple of different reasons why I wanted to be able to do this video with you. Not only for After Prison Show, because I want to give people a better sense of who you are, not only as a vessel and something for you to be able to look back on in the future, especially if you're ever faced with any hard times or hardships or negative thoughts, you can look back on this video, and hopefully this will be something that can motivate you to be able to pull yourself beyond that moment. But also, you don't know how many other people out there could possibly pick up something from you, find some strength and some motivation. the same type of motivation that we try to give to you, you can't possibly imagine the type of motivation that you're probably providing to countless others just by being willing to share your story.
Right. I feel like a lot of times people talking, even just in the program that I was in reentry, like a lot of times you get something little from something that somebody would say, and you never know. Sometimes when you say something, like a lot of times people might get something from it. You never know who's going to change something that if somebody says something, it might be just something little that they say or something that they went through. You never know who's going to be the one that's going to change the way that you look at something.
And before we go into the ins and outs of why you actually went to prison, there was something else that you mentioned as well that I want to elaborate on. And that is, you said that it wasn't until you were in prison that prison basically helped you. I want you to talk a little bit about this. Was it actually... Did this help that you received? Did this come from the programs that they were offering? Did this come from your own personal strength? Did this come from just having a clear mind for so many years to finally be able to piece together in your own head and in your own life the changes that you need to make? I want you to talk about where during your prison did the change actually come from?
Well, it definitely had to be with being clear-headed for a long time. So I think being pulled off the streets and not having the access to all the drugs. I know that there are some drugs available there, but being clear-headed and choosing not to do the drugs, that was part of it. Them not being readily available to you all the time. So, first of all, not being able to get them all the time, and then not choosing not to want them when they are there, that was part of it. But it really, when I first got to prison, I was in a lot of relationships and stuff like that. And that was one of my problems, I think, when I was out here, was being in bad relationships and stuff like that. And I think at some point, I just didn't have, the respect for myself that I needed. And maybe my self-esteem wasn't all that good. And, I think I was in yet like another bad relationship. And I think the epiphany came like at some point during that relationship, this person just didn't treat me the way that I treated them. And I realized, at some point that, I was doing the same thing on the street. Like I was putting somebody before I was putting my family, and, before I was putting myself. Like I just didn't care about myself like I should care about myself. And I think that was the major epiphany that I really did have, like that I didn't care about myself. And
I don't mean to interrupt you. I do want to ask you this, and this is probably, I don't even know if I'm okay to ask you this, but I want to ask it anyways. You mentioned the relationships. You said you dealt with a lot of bad relationships out here in the free world prior to you going to prison. Guys or people that you were dealing with who were dealing with addiction, and then you would end up getting involved in that. But you also mentioned that you were in a lot of relationships in prison. And, could you in any way talk about that? Can you explain that a little bit?
Okay, well, I was in a long-term relationship before I went to prison. So when I first got to prison, it was kind of like almost like a playground to me. I'm just going to be honest about that.
So boy, I'm trying to do this in the most like liberal, what the fuck is the word for it? Like the most, I want to ask
politically
you, are you
correct.
bisexual? Are you gay? And that's not an issue. It's just, I think it's
You want me to just elaborate myself, and then you don't have to ask the question?
Girl, you would help me in so many ways. 'Cause yeah. So, are you bisexual or are you?
I prefer women, but I have been in relationships with men. Like I kind of am just like over men, to be quite honest with you. I think the relationships that I was in before I went to prison kind of did me in with that.
And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that at all. Inquiring minds would want to know.
Yeah.
I'm nosy. I've always wanted to ask it. I've kind of beat around the bush a little bit. And
I'm probably one of the easiest people on the planet to talk to. Like I'm one of the most down-to-earth people, so don't ever...
I wanted to get a little more information about the relationships in prison, but we're definitely going to save that for another time altogether. But it's the relationships or the bad relationships, so to speak, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about guys or we're talking about girls, it's these bad relationships that you would constantly find yourself in, and finding yourself in another one of these bad relationships while you were in prison that I guess gave you that epiphany that, I don't want to speak for you, but again, let's talk about this bad relationship in prison and what you would realize from that.
I mean, it was just an unhealthy relationship. You know, it was like, you know, where like I didn't love myself enough to see that, you know, it was just unhealthy. And like, you know, when you find yourself not putting that person before yourself and putting that person before your family, or putting, you know, that person in front of what you need to do for yourself. And like it just finally came to the point where I was like, you know what, that's enough. That's enough. Like I need to put me first. And I guess it was just like I finally saw a light, and like it finally made sense to me. It just finally clicked. And it was just like this moment that finally made sense. Like I finally got it, and it was just like, okay, you know what? I just need to love myself more. Like I need to put myself first, and I need to put my children first. And it was just this moment where I started to love myself, I guess. And, you know, like I just didn't have that moment on the street, or I didn't have the clarity to see it on the street where, you know, like it wasn't always me in a situation. Like I was tired of the crap. People who would lie to you constantly, and you would just keep like accepting their apologies or keep whatever. And, you know, it just gets old. And, you know, like constantly needing somebody else's acceptance or whatever, and like just being able to be by myself, or just being able to, you know, like love myself for real. And I just didn't do that. Like,
so self-respect and self-esteem,
yeah,
most certainly would play a big part in these changes.
Huge part.
That you would find for yourself. How far into your incarceration did you finally see the light, like you said? How far into your incarceration did this actually take place?
Probably like 3.5 years into it, for real, to be honest with you. Like it was at the end of this relationship with this girl that I absolutely thought I was in love with. And like I finally saw the light, and that's probably a whole story for another day, maybe on one of your crazy stories day, that I'll tell you how that relationship ended. But
I can't wait. My little freaking wheels are turning right now just thinking about the clickbait title. No, thinking about, yeah, for sure. I definitely would like to hear that story at some point in the future. But I wanted to address some of these questions that I had thus far, but also now I want to go back. I want to go back to before you got locked up. And I want to go back to the day when you did get locked up. Could you talk to us about what was going on that day? Obviously, addiction was playing a major part in your life. But talk to me about the day that you actually got arrested.
Yeah, I had some buprenorphine, and I had a little bit of crack left. And basically, I was trying to go get some more crack. So the plan is that I was gonna take some receipts that I had, and I was gonna go steal the stuff that was on the receipts and have somebody go back into the store and return the stuff so we could get some cash. And so the first part of the plan worked out. I had already been in the store and stole the stuff, and I was in the guy's truck that was gonna go return the stuff, and he was in the store. Well, he'd been in there a minute, so I was in the car getting ready to shoot up. And I wasn't even paying attention to my surroundings because I was so busy doing what I was doing that, you know, I had the shot and I was trying to find a vein. And next thing I know, somebody's knocking on the window. Well, it happened to be the Chesapeake police. And they're like, hey, Shannon, come on, get out of the truck for me. And I was like,
they knew your name.
They knew my name. And I'm like, hold on. And they're like, no, get out of the truck. I'm like, you're going to have to hold on a second. And I got the shot real quick. And, oh, man, they were pissed. They were pissed. And they told me to get out of the truck, and they made me sit on the curb. They let me smoke a cigarette, but I knew I was going to jail. And I don't know if the people inside the store had called the police, or, you know.
Had they seen you?
Had they seen me? I still don't know. But they searched the truck, and, you know, they ended up finding, you know, like, obviously a crack pipe and a syringe and some stuff. I ended up getting charged with possession of crack cocaine and possession of powder cocaine and paraphernalia charges, and a violation of probation, of course. But, you know, I knew I was going to jail that day. I didn't know I was going to prison. But for some reason, you know, I was in denial. I still thought I was going to get bond, of course. You know, it didn't set it until like way later that I was actually going to prison. But, yeah, that's basically how I went to jail that day. Like, was I had been in the store shoplifting. And, you know, they didn't get me for that, but they definitely got me for the drugs. So
now, would this be something that you would do regularly?
Oh yeah, all the time.
And you would
all the time.
Talk to me about like how you would feel doing this. Like, would you have any fear? Were you ever scared of getting caught?
Oh no. You know, I thought I could take anything. Like, I could walk out of a store with anything. Like, I didn't think I would ever get caught doing that. But I mean, I did get caught a couple times, but I didn't think I would ever get caught. Like, if you give me Xanax, like I could pretty much walk out of a store with a TV, like a big screen TV. Like, I would walk right past them like I was supposed to be there. I would just walk out the the little security things at the same time as somebody else. And if anything dinged, I would just keep going and walk on to the car, like, at a nice normal pace, like I was supposed to have the TV. So, sometimes I would walk up to customer service, like walk through one of the cash registers, walk up to customer service, buy some stamps or something little, and then just keep going out the doors.
When you look back on this now, though, you talk about the fact you were never scared to do this. You could go get away with anything. What do you think about looking back on it now with a sober, clear mind state?
Oh, I mean, I probably should have had so much adrenaline. I probably should have been shaking when I did this stuff, because now, now I get nervous in these same stores because I'm like, oh my God, are they looking at me like, do they remember me? Because there's no way that I would try to do something like this now. But back then I just wasn't scared because I wanted to get high. So, there was nothing that was going to stop me from getting high.
And does that affect you at all? Because that's another thing that I really want to talk to you about is the anxiety. I remember when I came home after serving 7 years, the first store that I walked into, I damn near had a panic attack because I felt like everybody was looking at me, and I felt so out of place. Well, when you walk into these stores, do you feel any type of anxiety? Obviously, you said you did.
I do, especially like on the makeup aisles and stuff like that, on the aisles where there's small stuff, and you see all these security cameras and they've got all this stuff pointed at you and flashing and stuff inside the Walmarts and stuff. Like it gives me anxiety. It definitely gives me anxiety because I feel like there's definitely like their little secret shoppers and their, their loss prevention. I feel like their loss prevention people are watching me or something, because I feel like they probably remember me, because I feel like they're trying to remember, or when they try to get me for using stolen credit cards, I feel like they have facial recognition or something, and they're probably still watching me when I'm in their stores. But I feel like, your past can always come back to haunt you on some level, because I've had them come back, after they've tested stuff in the lab and arrest me like 30 days later or 60 days later. Like, they really do come back. So it's like, okay, am I really out? Or are they going to come back and get me 5 years later for something? Like, you start to wonder, I guess it'll go away after time, but and the other thing is too, like, I got on the Pop-Tart aisle and there's all these choices, and I got a little bit teary-eyed. I was like, oh wow, there's all these choices. But yeah, I definitely feel like the loss prevention people are probably still looking at me in there.
It's crazy that we talk about this right now, because I didn't even think about that. And these are things that I really should be taking into a lot of consideration. Is, we just took you to Walmart the other day. One, you've only just been home from prison for just a couple of days, 2 weeks now. I didn't even take into consideration like what the anxiety of that experience could be like, let alone you're walking in there with me and Cody, and we like to make a big old spectacle and like laugh and joke about things. But I do apologize if we did put any additional pressure or stress on you in that situation. With the fact that you deal with anxiety walking in these stores, does it at all feel like a trigger, or does it at all feel like it could be a trigger? Does it bring back the memories of, hey, I used to be going in this store for an entirely different reason?
No, it's not a trigger at all, because let me tell you, they've instilled fear in me for sure. Like, I don't ever want to go through what I went through again. Like, I definitely have the fear in me. Like, they have schooled me for sure. Like,
and you say they schooled you, and how do you mean? Like, by the fact that they sent you to prison?
Yes. I definitely, like, I don't ever want to go through that again. I've had enough of getting up at 6 o'clock count. I've learned. I'm telling you, I've learned my lesson, because, before it was like a slap on the wrist, a slap on the wrist, a slap on the wrist, and it's like I kept getting away with it, and so there was no true lesson there. Like, I think had they even like sent me to jail for like 6 months, like I might have had a chance of learning something. Probably not, but maybe like it might have put a little bit. I might have stopped for a little bit. It might have gave me a chance, but.
I don't say probably not because of you.
No. I understand.
You the individual. I want to say this. There were so many people who deal with addiction, who deal with similar type of addictions that you've had. My addiction, my drug of choice used to be cocaine. I smoked crack when I was 18. I never dealt with the opioids. But there's so many people who deal with the addiction, who go to countless rehabs where family is constantly like, okay, this rehab or Passages Malibu, something crazy like that. But for some, and that I don't honestly feel like rarely ever works. For some, or maybe even a lot of people, I truly feel like, prison could legitimately save people's lives. It saved my life. It certainly seems like it saved your life. This is your first time ever going to prison, and you come out like vowing to never have to go through that experience again.
Yeah, I mean, I went to rehab one time. I went to Edge Hill. I don't know if you've ever heard of that before, but it was like a 30-day inpatient rehab. And, you know, it's not like a lockdown rehab, like your family pays for it. And
It's probably expensive.
it was, yeah, it was expensive. Like my grandfather wrote a check, and I went to Oxford House after that, and I stayed at Oxford House for about 9 months before I relapsed. But
Oxford House, that's a halfway house, right?
it's not like a halfway house per se, but it's ran by other drug addicts.
It's a sobriety house.
It's a sobriety house, right? And a bad relationship took me out of that. So that's another thing to stay out of. You know, like for me, like it would be a bad relationship, but you know, that's why I say like I had that epiphany, like somebody that's not gonna bring good into my life. Like I really had to start looking at myself. That's why, you know, I talked about that in that first video. Like I really have to look at myself and love myself and put my family first. And people are just going to have to understand that that's the stuff that's going to come first in my life. But
you've got to be selfish at this point.
At this point, yeah, I really do. And I have to, you know, maybe not think that I've got this all by myself. Like I have to listen to my mom this time, and I have to listen to other people who have done this before, because, you know, I've always had this myself before. Like, you know, I have to, I really have to not just think I've got it, you know, all by myself this time, because, you know, that's the stuff that took me out before. And I have to look at that, take a look at that relationship thing, and take a look at the fact that I need to love myself. You know, like that self-esteem thing was a big thing that I worked on there, because it's not so much the drug now. Like I don't get up and think about getting high, you know, like, and before that's what I did. Like, you know, I spent so many years doing that. That was the first thing that I thought of. And I had to get up and I had to find a way to get high, or I wasn't going to function for that day. And it's so good to wake up and not feel like that. You know, like it's amazing to wake up and be grateful for what I have today. And, you know, and funny getting out of prison, like you wake up and you're grateful that you have brewed coffee, and you wake up and you're grateful that you have water temperature that you control, and you wake up and you're grateful that there's not a line for the bathroom, and you wake up and you're grateful that you have a phone. And, you know, it's just the little things. And my granddaughter's right there, and I don't have to get on, you know, wait in line to talk to my daughter. And, you know, I get to spend time with my mom, and my family's supporting me this time. And, you know, they believe in me, you know, and like I didn't have that before. Like they never believed in me before, and everything's just great this time. So
you have to have that positive support. You have to have, like you said, you can't do it all on your own. You definitely can't do that. You got to have people who root for you and support you. You've got your family who's doing that, and they're also a big motivator to you as well. Your daughter, your granddaughter, your mother. And I'm kind of glad that I'm not kind of glad. I'm really glad that we met you, because we want to be the same thing. We might not be family to you, but we definitely want to be some positive friends to you. You know, some people that you can rely on. I don't know what you would consider that, whether that's a mentor, whether that's a sponsor, whether that's just some friends who you can rely on and know will be there for you. And it's not just us, you know, it's the viewers as well. It's the people who are watching and listening to the things that you're talking about, who are rooting for you as well. So I don't mean this to sound the way that it will, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it. If you thought you had pressure to do the right thing before we came along, well, we brought a million other reasons as well with us. So, you know, it's no pressure, Shannon. You ain't got to get it right, but trust me, you know, it would definitely be disappointing to a lot of people.
no, I mean, it's accountability too. You know what I'm saying? Like, and that actually helps me. Like, that was one of the things I think about, like, when I look back at like the methadone clinic, it was accountability more so than I think it was the medicine. Like, I had somebody to be accountable to, you know what I mean? Like, I know that sounds kind of funny, but it's accountability too. Like there's more people to be accountable to. You know what I mean? Like I know that might sound weird, but
the accountability is a lot higher, because it's not just about you.
Right.
You know, it is totally about you. There's a lot of people who would be let down if things didn't turn out for the best. And with talking about that right there, I want to ask you this question, and that is, what if you were faced with the opportunity to use? You know, like how would you handle that situation? Do you feel like you have the strength to be able to say no? Do you feel like you've got enough separation between you and the addiction?
oh, I do right now. Right now, I definitely do, because I would just totally leave wherever I was at. I don't even want any part of it. I mean, like, I know I still have some family members that are using or that aren't doing very good, and you know, I mean, my mom's not even gonna let us be around each other, because, you know, it's just, I don't even want to be around it.
It's a bad situation for you.
It is, and it's sad, because, you know, it's just,
You're seeing what you were going through, basically. I mean, now you're getting a chance to see this as an outsider looking in, basically. You're clean, and you know other people who are still probably actively using or suffering from addiction problems.
It is, and from the outside looking in, you realize how much other people were worried about you. You know, because I've lost a lot of friends, and even people that I was in prison with that left, and so one of them never even made it home from the prison. They OD'd before they even made it home. So, I mean, it's a serious thing, especially right now with all the fentanyl and stuff and the heroin right now. People are dying. It's serious.
What do you think the biggest motivating factor in your life is for remaining sober and trying to do the most that you can in your life at this point?
Oh, I mean, my family. You know, I've got my granddaughter right now, and
She's a big part of your life?
She's a big part of my life. I mean, I'm staying at my daughter's house, so I get to play with my grandbaby every day. I get to see her every day. And, you know, that's a big change from, you know, being in prison. You know, I only got to see her the one time. So me and my daughter are starting to rebuild our relationship a little bit and trying to spend some time with my mom. She's a pretty busy lady, but, you know, she stops by to see me and stuff. And we got to spend the day together the other day, so that was great.
And it's good to be able to rebuild those bridges and to rebuild those relationships with people who probably had to some degree turn their back, you know, separate themselves from you. And it's happened to me before, you know. It's happened to a lot of people. People can only take so much of the people that they care about messing up their own lives, and also, you know, that bleeds off into their lives as well through the pain and the heartache that puts on them. You know, there has to be that separation. But to be able to prove to your loved ones, your family, you know, that you're here now, you're sober, and you're ready to do the right thing, and you're going to do whatever it takes to make sure that happens. That's got to be a really awesome feeling.
It is. It really is. And, you know, just trying to take it a day at a time, you know, and take baby steps, you know, and try to hopefully start rebuilding some of my relationship with my son here soon. I'm just waiting for him to kind of, you know, come back around here a little bit.
Shannon, I want to go ahead and wrap this up. I really wanted to just give people a better sense of where you've come from and where you are right now. And I appreciate you being so willing and open enough to share this with us. So again, thank you so much. And there is a lot more to come for sure.
All right, well, thank you for having me.